Hello everyone, look, welcome to today's tutorial rather, on presentation panels. We're going to go through some examples of good panels and some bad panels, so things you should be doing and things you shouldn't do. You can sometimes, a presentation panel is not about having the best work. You can have the best work, but if your panel is not succinct in what you're trying to sort of describe, then you're not going to have a favorable outcome. I like to think of just creating panels as almost trying to tell a story. There needs to be an introduction, a middle, and an end. The introduction is all about orientating the viewer, for them to have a key understanding of your concept. The middle is about having drawings which demonstrate the concept that you've just spoke about. So these are talking about your plans, your sections, your elevations, so the audience knows where the concept's coming from and sees the concept in the drawings themselves. And the ending is really, for me, it's a money shot. It's a climatic finish. You end off with this big note, this image that sums everything up, ties it all together. The key things to note when you're having a panel is a presentation panel. Normally people, naturally, they read from left to right and top to bottom. And so this is how the story should be told generally. So if you've got a big A1, you want to have the introduction to the top left as it moves across, down the middle, down to the right, and in the middle towards the bottom somewhere you have a big money shot. The other thing to take note of, it's the money shot that really draws you in to the project. So for example, this key image here that you can see in the middle is what actually draws you in. Everything else is very paid black. It's black and white. The colors are toned down. So you come in, look at this image, and then you start looking at the information that's down the side of the panel and understanding what it's all about. So you get drawn in by the money shot, and then the information backs it up. So it's almost telling the story backwards. Sometimes what you need to do is let the drawings breathe and let the drawings do the talking. So you don't want to have too much text in your panels, and you don't want the text to be too small either, or too big. Keep in mind that the panels are a visual language, so people only spend really roughly about 30 seconds on a panel. So you need to draw them in and make sure you can describe what the story is and the concept is through the drawings and not through text. So we'll start going through examples. We'll start on this first one that we have on the screen. As you can see, as we described earlier, you get drawn into this image by the big money shot. Very nice render. You can see that the images are breathing very nicely. So from here, you naturally go to the top left. You start reading down the panels, and this basically describes the concept of the project. There's maybe 3 or 4 different elements here. You can orientate yourself with this big site plan. You can see where the location of the project is. It's somewhere through here because it's got a grayscale. Everything else is treated as a nollie map, so it's very refined. It's not important, but you can sort of understand that it's a dense area, so you assume it's a city, and this sort of part here is an urban area. You've got the name and the title of it, so it's about a rehab. It's about health, wellness, and food, so you can sort of see it's almost a regeneration project. And then you have some sort of drawings in the middle here, which are descriptive drawings about what's happening. The second panel here, again, the money shot draws you in. It takes about 50% of the page, or the panel is the money shot. You can sort of see a site plan here as to where it's orientated. Everything else is lightly put in. That's not so important. You've got a bit of text to the top right. You've got a quote or a title like a stepping stone which describes the project. And all good architecture panels have some birds flying around. From there, you can sort of see you've got in the middle. You've got the descriptive images. So after you get drawn in from the image, you go to the middle. You start reading a bit of this. You can see it's got this evolution of what the concept is. Diagramming. You have an axonometric that's been pulled, so you can see what the internals of the buildings look like. Some diagrams which demonstrate zoning. You've got a legend here, and then from here you can orientate yourself within the context of the space. So again, this is a successful panel. The images are not overlapping each other. The images are not fighting for power. It's very refined from the bottom down, so it's very light on. It's all descriptive, and the top half is about having this image that does all the talking, I guess. Again, we'll go through this particular panel. Now, this isn't as successful as the first panel, but it does have some key characteristics there. You can see the text is to the left and there's text to the right as well, so that can be a bit confusing. The key thing in this panel is really this axonometric that has all the, I guess, the exploded axo has all the information. So really you're fighting for it with this rendering down the bottom and then rendering up the top, which sort of sandwiches the work, so it doesn't allow it to breathe. Really what should happen here is this axonometric should be pulled down the bottom or up the top, and you could almost get rid of the 2-3 renders and just have the one render that describes it. Similarly, the top drawings need to be a lot smaller. So this is an example of an okay panel, not so good. And there's also no title, no site plan, which is very key in understanding of the middle, the middle of the story basically is not there. Here is another basic panel, basic presentation panel. In this particular panel, you can see the text is to the top left. It has the title. It has sort of Money Shot 1.0. The descriptive images are not really there, but you can see there's a nice sort of section that runs through it, and an elevation as well. There are no diagrams. There's no key images. It's just really a perspective panel. So you would almost assume that this would be panel 1 of another 2 or 3 page presentation panel. So on its own it doesn't work, but with some descriptive images, with the introduction, with the middle, this panel will be successful basically. This is a presentation panel that's extremely busy. There's a lot of information that's going on here. It's got a beautiful render down the bottom, which is weighing down the panel, and you've got the site plan in the middle that merges into it. You can see from the previous panels, like this one that we're showing on the screen now, there's clear images. In this panel, they're all blended into one image, so it reads a lot cleaner, a lot nicer. Basically, it's a matter of overlaying the images and changing the opacity to be able to do this, which we have covered in the tutorials earlier. Up the top of the panel, you can see it's treated, the panel works from top to bottom. There's a lot of information which has been diagrammed in an icon sort of format, so you can see there's these key things that are happening in regards to this. There's a key problem, 60% of people at 6.1, there's an earthquake, whatever that might be, extremely destructive. There's certain words that are highlighted, so it catches your eye. So, you've got key sort of parts here. You've got an example of the building itself that's been sort of exploded. You've got key sections and elevations running down the right-hand side, site panel in the middle, and then you have this money shot down the bottom, which is very convincing that the work is real and it's been weighed down by this. Here's another clean panel shot, similar to what we were describing earlier. It's being weighed down by a big image, which weighs down the drawing, it brings it to life, and then you have an axonometric, which has all the introduction and the middle that's in there as well. So this is a very successful panel in the sense that the drawings do not overlap. It's very succinct. You look at this drawing to gather information, and then you look at the bottom to orientate yourself within the building itself. Note that it doesn't actually have any external perspectives or anything like that. So this is a very internal building. You can see it's a museum. You can see what the function of the space is. You can see the lighting conditions of the space. You can see that there's people that have been introduced. You can see there's actual items in the gallery. It's not an empty gallery. So when you're sort of designing your car park bay, you need to make sure that you have people that are in there, people that are actually using the space. You can see the little girls looking at this big statue. So all this sort of stuff makes it convincing that people and tells the viewer how the space is going to be used. You can see little icons that describe as to the functionality of certain places that become convincing as an overall panel. Really, the key image here is the money shot, but it's the axonometric that is the middle of the image that basically sells the image and makes it real. Here's an example of a very, very bad panel. It's unlegible. There seems to be a plan here, and then the ground plan, which is the same as the plan above, plus something that looks exactly the same, equals or minuses the voids and circles, gives you something else. Now this panel can be very, very confusing to read as a diagram, and it just doesn't make sense. So you need to be 100% convinced that, and 100% sure that your diagrams actually work and they make sense when looking at it. Here's an example of another competition panel. What's happened here, there's a lot of text at the top. The text is not orientated, so it throws the viewer off as to how they read it. It's all disjointed. It starts from the top and it moves to the top right of the screen. There seems to be a site plan which is not flat on, it's on an angle, but it's okay. There's images that come off there that connect certain things. However, what's happening is it's becoming too busy. The images are going into the text. As a result, the text has to be reformatted, and you have these perspectives that have been put in, but you cannot orientate yourself as to where this is. So this is an example of an unsuccessful panel. Thank you for listening to the panel tutorial.